Go ahead and begin.
Okay. So, call the meeting to order. Now it's 4:13. And our pledge of allegiance. And I'll lead it to you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Calling roll. Board Member Walkup.
Here.
Board Member Tiffany, absent. Board Member Fonseca.
Here.
Board Member Duff, absent. Board
No.
Member. Oh,
I'm here.
Board Member Dement.
Here.
Board Member Casades. Board Member Blackman. Here. Vice Chair Castanos. Here. Chair Johnson.
Here. Okay, item 3, any additions or deletions to the agenda?
None.
Item 4, public comments. So if we have any.
No hands are raised at this moment.
Do you want to have them now introduce?
Yeah, we could go ahead and
Yeah, we have a couple of people introduced. I'll let you introduce John, but I want to introduce our new Assistant City Manager, Amanda Lee. Amanda comes to us from the city of Vista. So with that, I want to welcome her and let her introduce herself if she'd like.
Yes, I come from work, my work life was from the city of Vista, but I'm actually a resident. So actually not of La Mesa of San Diego. I live on Blue Lake, which is one street away from hop my fence and be in La Mesa. So I'm happy to actually be here and be able to serve my own community. This is where I play in parks with my children, and very exciting to actually work with everyone and be a part of the community. Thank you for having me.
welcome. And I'd like to introduce our newest board member, John. And John, if you'll tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure, my name is John Fonseca. I own a business here in town called Fonseca's Design Shop. We do signage, graphics, marketing. I have 2 boys, both go to Helix. I'm a longtime La Mesa resident since 1986. I volunteer at the hospital on a few different boards, and I'm happy to help out with this board.
Glad to have you. Thank you.
And you represent the business sector.
I do, yes.
Okay, item 5, conflict disclosures. The current business, we'll start with 6.1, approval of the minutes from the regular meetings held February 15th and March 15th.
So I wanted to make mention of, well, first I want to extend my apologies for submitting the unedited version of the February 15th to 2023 minutes. I was having a malfunction with the e-scribe, but when I returned, I realized and I fixed the minutes. So the 2 motions were corrected as far as the removal of the check boxes. I did want to say, it was brought up that the motion was combined. It was stated that the motion was combined, and it was not combined. There was actually 2 votes in regards to item 5.6. So I edited that, and the February 15th minutes should be up to date. Well, it is up to date.
Anybody?
Oh, I'm sorry. And then as far as the current agenda, I did re-edit and I submitted a current agenda with the attachments to the board today. Chair Johnson, you were below, so I put you on the top. So that's one of the edits that were correct.
Okay. Thank you. Anybody have any corrections for either of those 2 sets of minutes that they saw? I only saw one thing, one little tiny thing. And one, I think it's on the March 15th minutes on page 12. says Chair Leroy. So I said, okay, just for consistency, we'll go Chair Johnson. So, I think.
We just like your first name.
I know, the first name is cool, but yeah, that's the only thing. We'll get it fixed.
Okay, I'll correct that, thank you.
But that's the only thing. So, other than that, I think we can move on. Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve both the February 15th and the March 15th minutes. Any questions?
Board Member Walker, how do you vote?
Yes.
Board Member Fonseca, how do you vote?
Abstain.
Board Member Dement, how do you vote?
Yes.
Board Member Blackman, how do you vote?
Yes.
Vice Chair Costanos, how do you vote?
Yes.
Chair Johnson, how do you vote?
Yes.
Board members, or motion carries with all board members voting yes.
Okay, on to item 6.2, the Mesa Police Department updates and military equipment.
Thank you, Chair. Board, it's good to see everybody, especially on this beautiful Wednesday. Want to give you a couple updates on our staffing, as I always do. We are currently still down 6 police officer positions and 1 dispatch position. I don't think that's changed since last I talked to you. However, we have some good news is that we have currently 3 people in backgrounds that are academy graduates. So what that means to us and you is that they've already completed an academy. That cuts off 6 months of their training time. So we've already given 1 job offer. I gave 1 job offer yesterday. And then I have another interview hopefully this week. And then next week, another interview with those 3. Like I said, that should fill 3 of those 6 open positions. We currently have 1 police officer in the police academy right now. We have 2 in training, and we have 2 that are waiting to come into training that were injured while in the academy. So we still have a little bit of a staffing issue, but our patrol staffing is priority and has taken priority since. So there's sunrise or sun in the horizon that we can see. Want to talk about April. April is Autism Awareness Month. As you know, as you can see, myself and Captain Nicholas are wearing our Autism Awareness patch that we created for this month. We do the same thing in October for breast cancer awareness. And then last year we did the Pride patch. We went out to the Pride parade. So just trying to have that outreach. If you were at the last city council meeting, you may have seen I was able to present 2 life-saving medals to 2 of our officers that were able to save a gentleman's life on Thanksgiving of last year. So it was basically a call that they responded to of a gentleman that was choking. Family was there, and you can imagine how distraught they were when the officers got there. But the victim in this case was turning blue, and the officers went in and immediately applied their first aid skills and were able to dislodge the food that was caught in his throat, saving his life. So that was the first that I got to do that award presentation as a chief. But not only a first as a chief, it was the first at a city council meeting in front of the public. Typically, we do these in our award ceremonies, but I think they happen way too often that we need to get out there and show the great work that the officers are doing. This on March 30th, we finished the Kids Watch Academy. Katie, do you know how many we had total? I think about 23, something like that.
2 or 23.
Yeah, 22 or 23 kids that came here. They were with us. They completed the Kids Watch Academy. That was just exciting. Young kids, just full of energy. So it's always fun to be able to interact with them. That's our department update. I'll pause for any questions if you have any on that before I go into the military equipment report.
So I just want to say I appreciated watching the city council recognition of the 2 officers. It's really a nice touch, and I think we don't do that often enough where we show our appreciation as a city to the work that your police officers do. So it's great that you include that, because I think too often we hear in the news a lot of the not so good things. So
Sure.
Gotta keep it, keep bringing this information forward as well.
I appreciate that, and that's what we're going to continue to do. Not only accountability, but being able to show the great work that our officers are doing. So I appreciate it. And then one last thing I forgot to mention is that myself, Chair Johnson and Vice Chair Castaños went to Helix High School last week. Was it last week?
Yeah, that's. what-
Yeah, last week. And we presented to a very interactive and large group of students about the school to prison pipeline and how that's being disrupted, not only in the school systems, but across the board. So that was a very good presentation.
Don't forget Declan.
And Declan came.
Declan.
I got to meet Declan. He stole the show. She didn't bring him today.
I'll-
Sorry.
I'll get him in a little bit.
Yeah.
Declan.
Yeah, Declan, our facility dog, for those that don't know, is always taking the light. So as he deserves. So, really good. So appreciate that.
Yeah, it was, I think we all were so impressed with the students' questions. They asked tough questions. And I just have to say, one thing I love about bringing the chief to any community event is he doesn't get defensive. He just, he hears the questions, he answers them. He tries to learn from their concerns, but it's really a great way to handle community concerns is hear them, listen to them. And rather than getting defensive and saying, I don't know what you're talking about, he takes it into consideration and and offers, a solution or offers to look into it or to meet with them further. And the students walked away really appreciating the chief that we have here in La Mesa. So that was nice. I mean, I think they didn't shy away from asking tough questions because they listen to national news and some are on the speech and debate team and Helix has a tough speech and debate team and they didn't want to sugarcoat anything. So it was kind of nice. I mean, it was nice to see your response to them.
It was a good conversation.
Yeah.
That's what it's all about, is having those conversations. A lot of kids ask, how do we improve? And that's by continuing to have these conversations and dialogue. Sometimes we get, so busy in our own worlds, everybody, that we miss those opportunities. So really good. All right, you ready for the summary of the military equipment use this year? So as you may or may not know, on May 10th of last year, the city council approved military equipment use ordinance. They were required to do that by law as of January 1st of last year. Assembly Bill 481 was passed. And there was direction on what was deemed military equipment. A lot of it that you see may, depending on, who you are, what military, if you've been in the military, you understand that some of the stuff is not technically military equipment, but it was deemed as such by the law. So what we had to do is put together a list of all the equipment that we had that fell within those categories. They were all categorized. I do have my staff here behind me for any questions that I may not be able to answer immediately. But we presented that list to the city council. We asked them for approval to have an ordinance so that we can continue to use the equipment that we have. Some of the equipment that we talk about, I'll give you a few examples, our beanbag shotguns, pepper ball guns, our drones, our Bearcat that we have. We have a robot through our SWAT team, SRT, that goes in, unlocks doors and does things like that, delivers. So equipment like that, that I have the whole list here, which is our appendix A, which we added on to our website. It's on there. But basically what we're required to do every year is to have this published 30 days prior to the city council meeting and prior to a public meeting. We're using this as our public meeting to have a conversation about what we've used, how much of it we've used. Did we receive any complaints? Did we have any policy violations throughout the year? The answer to all those questions are no. We did use it for training, which that's what we expected when we did the presentation in May of last year, is that you would see quite a bit of the use of these tools for training. So if you look on the executive summary, it goes through the definitions of what military equipment is. And then as far as our equipment used, we have a listing of training events So it's all the way from the Linco Bearcat to our flashbangs, our M4 rifles that our SWAT operators have. The robot that I'd mentioned, I can go on, but you have the list in front of you. It's also published on the website. They're categorized. As you can see, there's 14 categories. So they're numbered there, and it shows our total quantity of use for training. So these were all training environments. Either it happened during a special response team training day, happened on the range for us. We did an active shooter training this past year where we used a lot of this equipment. So you can see that the numbers for use are on here for you to look at. The second one is field incident uses. We had 8 field uses of equipment that fell within those parameters. I'll go over those real quick, just so you know what they were, but on May 24th, equipment used was the beanbag shotgun and the super sock cartridge, which is the projectile that comes out of that beanbag shotgun. This was a subject with a gun near a bench. The officers approached, he initially dropped the gun, but then began reaching for it again. The officers deployed a beanbag round, striking him on the hip, and they were able to take him into custody after that without any further incident. Then on June 16th, we used our mobile command vehicle. Our mobile command vehicle is basically a van that has computer equipment in it. We're able to talk back and forth to the radio. We can throw up signals to our drone, and it's a high-tech van. We use that for death investigation that was at night. We use the command post. We bring it out there to provide lighting and access to on-scene resources for the officers that are out there. On August 12th, we used a drone. That drone was used to take aerial photographs over a homicide scene. We found it very useful for that, among other things. The second one was August 24th, another drone use. This was used to take, again, aerial photographs over an arson scene. Instead of bringing out a helicopter, we're able to throw that drone up and get those photographs, which are pretty amazing photographs. And then September 30th through October 2nd, as you know, at our Oktoberfest, we had the drone up flying during the entire event. That, it's one of those things I like to mention. The very first time at our Oktoberfest, we had 0 arrests and 0 crimes. And I attributed that to the presence of the police being out there. We had the drone up, catching little things as they go and make sure they didn't turn into big things. So just a huge success, but that was the third use of the drone.
And the alcohol being stopped at 9 or something, 9:30.
Well, I think they still continued that till 10:30.
But that was only inside, right? I mean,
Inside the footprint of
oh,
the
okay.
Oktoberfest.
Oh,
Yeah,
I
and then the bars-
thought any outside.
No, the bars were still open, so the alcohol was flowing.
Beer gardens.
Yeah, but I think, we.
Get rid of that.
Oh, sorry. There was just a lot. I mean, it was really the first time that, we try and tell people, listen, don't talk yourself into jail. We don't want to take you to jail.
Yeah.
We would rather have your friends take you home, and then they have Uber and Lyft. They have ride sharing services that are offered there that we try and get people into cars and going home with their friends rather than making the arrest, because that's usually what the arrests come from, is drunk in public, fighting. We didn't have any of that. Our 49th annual, but we had a large police presence, and we had the drones up, like I said, over the top to make sure that everybody there was safe. So it was a good coordinated effort throughout the entire city. October 11th, we had another drone use. We had our Bearcat use, and we had our mobile command vehicle use. This was for a search warrant that was executed for a homicide investigation, that same one that you saw the drone for last time. That was our homicide that occurred on University Avenue. So they executed a search warrant with all that equipment safely. November 1st, we assisted El Cajon PD with a barricaded suspect in their jurisdiction. We used our robot to go in and clear that so officers wouldn't have to do that. And that was a successful mission. And then last, November 28th, was the use of a pepper ball rounds, pepper ball launcher, beanbag shotgun, and of course the round from the beanbag. And this was a subject had fled from a stolen vehicle and led officers on a foot pursuit. went to go hide in a ditch and did not follow commands as the officers were trying to get him to show his hands. He kept concealing them in his pockets. After multiple commands to show his hands, officers deployed pepper ball. Typically what they do is they skip this into the ground so that the pava really starts to irritate the eyes. And most people will give up, but it's not effective on everybody. I'll use myself as an example. Pepper spray will not affect me until later. It's a weird thing. I found out on the freeway coming home from the police academy when I bit into an apple and the juice went in my eye and then it activated.
Wow.
So, we just know that it doesn't always work on everybody. So anyways, the pepper ball rounds were fired. And then ultimately that subject complied. We were able to get him in handcuffs and detain him. Nobody was injured with the gun. Next is our complaints. We have a website, an email, phone number that people can call, make complaints on. They can still use the CPOB through that matrix. We have complaint systems to the front, and we also have sergeants that are on scene. During all these incidences, we received 0 complaints this year about the use of that equipment. And then as far as equipment procedure violations, we do after actions on every use of that equipment that we use to make sure that it was used within policy, that it was effective. If it wasn't effective, why wasn't it? Is there something else we could have done? So we have no policy violations for the uses that were listed as I've shown. Last one is the equipment inventory costs. Our costs are the same. We submitted the initial cost to the city council on May 10th of last year as to what we expected this equipment to cost. It's just replacing rounds, replacing the training, flashbangs, things of that nature when we use them. And then the projected acquisitions, we did not project for 23-24 fiscal year to purchase any new equipment that would fall under military equipment. The only thing that we would purchase would be replacement ammunition, pepper ball, things like that we would use in training for actual missions. And that completes the report for the military equipment annual update. We plan on presenting this to the city council next week on the 25th. So I will now just open it up. If you have any questions, anything that we can answer for you, or happy to do that.
So April 25th.
Correct.
Okay.
I just had one, Chief, the pepper ball training event you did, so. So when you're doing the training, are you practicing like those skip rounds you were talking about, because
Kind of
one of those.
Kind of both.
Yeah.
So when we go to the range, we practice with the pepper ball
Mhm.
and the beanbag shotgun, and it's placement of rounds. So you may be on the round or on the range and they say, okay, skip the rounds in front to get the PAVA disruption. PAVA is the active ingredient. There's also aim areas on the body, right? Places you want to avoid, like head, neck, spine, back, groin. And then you have to actually place those rounds there. It's a dummy, I guess, but you're not shooting at somebody because that would really hurt. So that's how it's done in training.
Any questions at all?
Chief, is every officer certified to deploy those rounds, or is it only certain officers that can, like the beanbag and the CS and all that?
Every officer that has been through the training and is qualified.
Okay.
So if, we may have new officers that haven't gone to that training yet, so they're not certified. But any officer that is qualified to be on patrol and they've gone through all their training, they can carry it.
So that's the criterion to be in the car.
Yes, public comment.
I think Bob had a comment.
Bob, do you have a comment?
I did have a comment. Basically, the question is kind of answered there, but I was questioning whether all officers have training on all pieces of equipment, and if they don't have training, are they authorized to use it at all in any situation?
If they're not trained on it, they are not authorized to use it.
It would eliminate that other problem that happened.
We have a public comment by Andy Trimlet. Andy? Andy, you're allowed to talk.
Cool, thank you very much. And I just want to say first, I'm really glad that the police department is putting this out. I know it's part of the law, but I'm still glad to see it. A few notes and some questions. First, I'd really appreciate if you switched away from some of the acronyms. I'm a proud member of the AAA, the Anti-Acronym Association. I just think they don't help a lot with the public understanding what things are. I think, for company names like CTS, that's fine, but something like an MCV, I think it would just be valuable to type that all out. I did notice that there were a couple types of ammunition that were zeroed out, like the 5230 CTS CS gas was at 90 last year and is 0 this year. And the 3230, same thing, and then the 3440 OC muzzle blast has gone from 15 to 0. Did those expire, or did they get used somehow, or I'm just curious what's going on with that?
Andy, are you talking on the appendix A, or are you talking in the
Correct.
usage report? Appendix A?
Correct. Yeah. And then another question, I realized that tasers are not considered military equipment unless they're that fancy shockwave thing. But I am curious to know what kind of use of tasers you've had, because tasers have been linked to deaths in a number of cases across the country. So I'm just, while we're on the subject, I'd love to hear a little bit more about your use of tasers and training on that. My biggest question, I would say, is in relation to the Daniel Defense M4 assault rifles. It definitely concerns me that officers have access to fully automatic weapons. I realize that this is not something you use on a regular basis, but I am very much struggling to find a scenario in which fully automatic weapon fire would be justified in our neighborhoods. My understanding from speaking to Lieutenant Runge is that these were semi-inspired by the North Hollywood bank robbery several years back, in which a couple of guys that were very heavily armed and wearing armor stormed a bank, and it did not end well. Still, I feel like even in that scenario, shooting more bullets at the bad guys is not going to be good for our neighborhoods. I mean, really what you need is one bullet in the right place, and that's the job of the Remington 308, as I understand it. So, in the military, fully automatic weapon fire is typically used for suppressing enemy movements rather than actually killing the enemy. And I don't think that is something the police would ever want to do in our neighborhoods. So I'm wondering if you can help me understand why we have these weapons, and if there's another solution that would be, I feel like there are other solutions that would work better and keep our neighborhood safer.
So, yeah, I appreciate the question, Mr. Trimlet. I'll start with your last one, the automatic weapon fire. Those Daniel Defense weapons are issued only to our special response team. So they're not issued to every police officer on the street. That would be a fully automatic weapon. Those are for special tactical situations, and technically the officers are trigger control. So we can agree or disagree, but I mean, when an officer goes into a situation, they need to put 3 rounds down range. It's a lot easier to do that with one controlled blast rather than one each as far as semi-automatic. That's why they're trained like that in special response teams, special weapons and tactics. It's a standard across the board for those teams. It's not something that we deploy in a general situation. It's something typically where we deploy where it's a barricade or a hostage type of situation. So not every one of our officers are not walking around carrying those weapons. Our special response team, our SWAT team, is the only ones that has those right there. As far as the tasers, I don't have the statistics in front of me. We don't use it a lot. But when we have used it, it has been both ineffective and effective, depending on the clothing that the person's wearing. We have had no deaths, no serious injuries from the taser. Like I said, sometimes it's very effective, sometimes it's not effective at all. We used it, it wasn't too long ago on somebody that had a lot of clothing on. And when you can't penetrate through that clothing, you're not going to get the effect that you want as far as what the taser does, and that's muscle disruption. So I think it's both good and bad, right? I mean, you have to use the correct tool for the job, and obviously the officers have to make that decision out in the field. You talk about the Los Angeles bank thing with the weapons and kind of how that came around. I mean, it's an interesting study looking at it, because the LAPD was absolutely outgunned in that time. And now, we were always trying to think ahead, what can we do better? And so, we don't give those automatic weapons to every police officer in the street, because that's definitely what we don't want, is suppressive fire. That's not the world that we operate in. It's controlled. And only specially trained operators should have those type of weapons. Collectively, coming full circle, we're always looking at what we have and what other options are out there. You mentioned the 308. Being a former sniper myself, I know that 308 is not only a heavier weapon to carry around, but you have to get into a certain location in order to be able to use it effectively. Those are sniper rifles. Typically, you're from a distance and a safe distance as you can be, and in ever evolving situations, you may not have the time to get into one of those situations or to get into a safe spot to be able to use that weapon effectively. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, and I'm not convinced, but I appreciate you taking the time to talk about it. I am curious about the more minor question of some of on the Appendix A, the ones that were zeroed out. Did those just expire, or what happened there?
Yeah, I have Lieutenant Lynch is behind me, so she's going to take a look into that. I don't have the answer to that, but I appreciate you pointing that out.
Cool. Thank you.
That's what I'm seeing that I think he's referring to.
Okay, perfect.
And
Thank you.
I guess compared to last year's report, the nitrate, whatever, that went from 90 down to 0. And so did they expire? Were they used during training?
It's a combination of both. They do have an expiration date on those, so as they're going through and doing the inventory on those, these are expired and they're disposing of them properly, or they get used up in training, so.
Okay.
Yeah, if they weren't, yeah.
And then there was the, let's see, 46. Muzzle blast has gone from 15 to 0, it's same sort of thing. From comparing last year's report to this year's. I don't know if the muzzle blast is no longer used. Maybe it's.
If it's zeroed out, it's likely, right? Which number are you looking at, ma'am?
I didn't.
Oh, okay,
21.
Yeah,
21.
thank you. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that's gonna be an OC smoke projectile as well, so those do have expiration dates on them. Those are like, it's a launched smoke projectile with OC, so it does have that irritant to it, and those do have those expiration dates on it. Most of the gas stuff is gonna have those expiration dates.
Okay, and then lastly, there's the LRAD, which emits a loud noise, and last year we talked about it being used as a opportunity to give public comments to large groups of people. And the concern among members of the community is that it could also be used as a weapon and damage eardrums. And I think Rungy met, I don't see him, but he met with one of our community members last year, and they said it would never be used for that. purpose. It would only be used for announcements, but we were wondering if the report could say that the device is only used as a public announcement system to deliver dispersal orders. Instead of, right now, it doesn't have the word only in there, it just says it's used for dispersal
I
orders.
think we wrote that into our policy. And then the second thing was, we don't have an LRAD.
Oh,
So that's important for the public to know. We do not own one. We can use one from the sheriff's department.
okay, so if you do have one, it's borrowed.
That's what we wanted to make sure that it was in there, because if we needed to use it for public announcements, it's a wonderful tool. It's a very, very loud speaker.
Yeah.
But it's not, it doesn't even have the capability to be used as a weapon.
It doesn't get that loud?
It does not have the weaponizing ability that
Like
an
some-
LRAD would have, like a military LRAD.
Okay, so this is not that high.
We had to add it in because if we use the sheriff's equipment, if they come here, that we need to be able to use that. Are you seeing something different?
No, I am seeing it says and never as an acoustical weapon.
Right.
Okay. so
Yeah, I can get more information for the board. It's not a bad question. The LRAD that the sheriff's department uses, I can get the specs on that to show that it's not a weapon. It's not an LRAD weapon. It's for amplification noise.
I have experience with that LRAD, and that is a very, very, very good piece of equipment, period, end of story. It does anything you want it to do, but it can be muffed down. I've seen it, I've heard it, I've been next to it. It's actually a great non-lethal way if you know, to let people know what's going on. I mean, and it's clear as a bell. Clear.
Yeah, I understand the public's concern and how that can be used as a weapon. In the military, it has been, but it's not used like that in the police departments. It's meant just as a very loudspeaker, not to zing your ears to where you just, I need to leave now, but to where you can actually hear. And that's the issue that we ran into on May 30th was getting those disbursement announcements out loud enough for everybody to hear. And you know, you can't do it with a bullhorn, especially when you have very large crowds. And we tried with our Bearcat. That was a mistake. You saw how that went bad. But the LRAD itself, to be able to place up in a certain area, to be able to get those announcements, it can be heard across the entire city. It's extremely loud, but not so loud to where you're gonna lose
Eardrums,
hearing.
yeah.
It's not,
Yeah.
that's the weaponized portion of it.
Question, how many officers are in the SRT? And then what percentage of officers have been trained to use the beanbags and pepper spray? roughly?
So SRT is authorized 18. That's with the commander. I think right now we're at 16 operators. And then as far as who's been authorized, the percentages for the beanbag and what?
Beanbag and pepper spray. They have to go through training to be able to use those?
Yeah, I mean, everybody goes through training in
Okay.
the police academy.
Oh, so that's part of police academy, it's not,
It is.
okay. So everybody on the force is able to deploy those?
Yeah, pepper spray, and like I said, you have to go in the police academy, you get sprayed with that. I gave you my example where I got it and walked away thinking I did something wrong, or I should maybe act something. It doesn't affect everybody. But as far as the less lethal projectile weapons, which are the beanbag and the pepper ball guns, that's done internally here at the department. So they get familiarization in the academy, but when they get here, they get our department specific training.
So everybody in our department's gone through the specific training that's provided here?
Mostly, we still have some that are in training that are not out of training yet, but they've gotten familiarization and they will get their chance to go through that training as part of the curriculum.
Thank you.
Not knowing how it works in an emergency situation, but when some of these weapons are deployed, is there a connection with an officer with the weapon picked up? I think that was a problem. I don't know if it was our situation or something else, but not knowing who used what weapon, or even a weapon being used and then disappearing, right? So how do we track? And you have a weapon on your belt, we know whose that is, I'm assuming, right?
Right, we do.
When these are deployed, they're deployed in mass, right?
They, yes and no.
Okay.
Now you're talking about the riot on May 30th, and that was, everybody was just grabbing for anything that they could at that time. That's why, you know, that the tracking methods at that time, it was just such an anomaly that night. But typically, the most typical deployment is an officer has a beanbag shotgun in their trunk. Another officer has a pepper ball launcher in their trunk. They respond to a call. As soon as they get there, they're going on scene saying that they have a pepper ball launcher. So they're identifying what they have. We know which one they checked out, so we can track it that way. It's the same with the beanbag shotgun. They're gonna go on scene and they're gonna identify that they have that option with them. So it's not only tracked when we check it out, but it's also tracked on our CAD system, which is our computer-aided dispatch. Our situation on May 30th was,
Is there a way, so has there been an adjustment to that? I mean, God forbid that happens again, but let's say there is that massive response. Is there an expectation that there's some way to connect the weapons with people, or is that just not, that's impossible?
no, I won't say it's impossible. Because, you know, we've geared our training specific to that system that you have. So if you are issued a beanbag shotgun, you've been trained on that, you know what that one is, you know what those sites are. If we get into a situation where you have to borrow somebody else's, then you're expected to know what that is and where it came from. And, you know, use of force should be documented that same time. And in that documentation should be everything. So that's the fix.
So there is documentation post-use of that equipment of who utilized that particular piece of equipment.
Correct.
For liability reasons.
For
I'm
liability.
assuming.
And
And-
accountability.
Yeah,
And if an officer has not been, let's say the sheriff comes in to assist and they say, here's another weapon to use, but the officer hasn't been trained on that particular weapon. They might have been trained on, you know, beanbag projectiles, but this is a different brand or whatever. I don't know. This is a different beanbag projectile. They can't use it. Is that correct?
They should not. And I say should not for certain reasons, because if something were to happen traumatic where we just, you know, make that split second decision, you do it, we'll deal with the consequences later. Then that's what we'll do. You know, if it comes to public safety, and, you know, making sure that we can protect our community, then I expect the officer, you know, if I gotta grab your gun, I don't know what gun you shoot, but somebody's trying to kill me or you. I don't want an officer to stop and say, I can't do that, I'm not trained. I want them to react, right, as reasonably as possible. But we put those provisions in place to hopefully avoid that. Now, like I said, May 30th was a complete anomaly. Complete. I hope it never happens again, but in the off chance that it does or something similar, our officers are better equipped to make decisions and track what they're using.
Because, and I think in that particular situation, our officer probably wouldn't have used that weapon. I don't know. I don't know if you're comfortable speaking to that or.
You know,
I mean,
and nobody in this community has experienced something like that.
Yeah.
So this was new for all of us. And, you know, for me to say that we walked in and didn't learn anything would be a complete lie. You know, we learned a ton. We're where we are where we are right now because of it. You know, and we're better for that. I can't say that, you know, that would have never happened. Because we never expected what happened to happen. But, you know, all I can do is try and put policies in place to make sure that the officers protect not only the public, but themselves from future liability. And that, you know, we have an accountability method in place to hopefully prevent the need to use somebody else's equipment that they're not trained on. And that, you know, for us is having enough here that our officers can take it out into the field each time on their own.
So when, and From my understanding is officers are responsible for every shot fired. I mean, they personally are responsible and they know exactly where the bullet came from. Is this difficult to manage when you have an automatic rifle that's just, it seems like that would make it hard for the officer because, you know, the shots are so rapid fire.
No.
No.
No, I speak from experience, being a former special response team operator. When we train for 3 rounds. You know, put 3 rounds, 4 rounds, 3 rounds, 2 rounds, 1 round. When you're on fully automatic, your trigger, the way that you are putting those rounds down range are controlled. And I know there's controversy and there's disagreement, but I can tell you that each one of the operators go through a certain training volume to where that's second nature to them. And you know, sometimes as you've seen, when people are wearing body armor and helmets, anything else where, you know, 1 or 2 rounds may not be effective, a quick 3 may put them down. The next one may be able to have you control that threat. So those, you know, those are SWAT tactics that are national tactics. So I would say it's not difficult to control. And you're right. Every round that goes down range, that officer is responsible for, every single one. So, you know, that's why training and tactics are extremely important.
So I was just also wondering why the mobile command vehicle that you said is a van is not on the or is it on the, it's not on the list, but maybe it just wasn't practice, it wasn't used for practice. Do you typically take the mobile command vehicle out for practice or?
Sometimes
It's not something you have to do.
it's really easy to get set up and sent out.
Okay.
You just basically turn everything on and go. Just think of it like a camping van, like the really high tech, I don't know, sprinter vans, that's what they call them. That's what this is.
Is it bulletproof?
No. Like, yes, in case anybody. It's not.
Yes, of course. Yes, of course. So, and just one last question. When you look at this type of equipment, is this something that the general public can obtain? I mean, is it easy? Or is it specialized for military and police? And I kind of worry about that.
I have not seen the public obtain. You have, okay, so here's an example. What do you call it? Not war games, they're out. Paintball.
Oh, yeah.
Paintball. Paintball guns are very similar, almost identical to a pepper ball launcher. So yes, the public can obtain that. Can they obtain the pepper balls that are in it? No. Those are all tracked. So beanbag shotguns, anybody can get an 870 Remington shotgun. Anybody can buy that. Can they get beanbag rounds that are police issued? No. Flashbangs, they can't get that. They can't get Bearcats. They can make real big trucks with as much bulletproof metal as they want, but they cannot buy what we have. And then I'd have to go through the list individually, but the majority of everything on there cannot be bought, purchased by the public legally
In California.
in California. Yeah, I should preface that.
Yeah, I noticed that the Dodge truck was a 2014, right? So it's I have a 2013. I know that someday I'm gonna have to get something new. Do you auction them? I mean, obviously they're not obtainable. How do you do? And maybe this is a side conversation, but then does that equipment get destroyed? How does it not get back into the public after its usefulness for the police department is done?
So for the Dodge van, it would be completely stripped out.
Okay.
So all you would have is just a Dodge van. You wouldn't have any police components, radio system.
So it is destroyed in that sense.
Stacy, there aren't any more public comments. Okay.
Not at this moment.
I just wanted to say, I appreciated everyone sharing their insights as far as the military equipment goes, because I don't know a whole lot about military equipment, so I do appreciate everyone chiming in and giving feedback in regards to that, because that helps bring greater clarity for myself and also for the public. Also, I would like to say that I do appreciate the fact that with this transparency that we're able to see that it does appear that the PD is using this type of equipment thus far in a very responsible manner. I can appreciate the fact that there's been no loss of life, which is ultimately our goal. We want to keep, you know, our community safe. We want to keep that preservation of life consistent. So I thank you for the transparency, because I just love to see that, you know, it's not being misrepresented, that type of equipment, because when you hear military equipment, for me, it triggers a sense of fear.
Sure.
Right? I don't want to go to war. I have no plans of going to war. I have friends that are in the military, and some of those things are very scary that they experience, but it does sound like you guys are using that type of equipment in a very responsible manner, considering the capabilities that could happen with that type of equipment. So I appreciate the transparency.
Thank you.
No further comments on that. We'll go to item 6.3, independent police auditor updates.
Mr. Rasmussen?
I'm glad the chief didn't point out I really wasn't in the military, so thanks for that, chief. We completed an audit this quarter and have submitted it up the chain. It was a pretty benign case. There was no supporting evidence, and in fact, there was contradictory evidence that was available so that we could arrive at the proper conclusion. And I believe Lynn will be setting up a small committee meeting for that case to be briefed, as we agreed to in the previous quarterly report. We're also almost done with at the previous CPOB meeting. We're almost done with the quarterly report, and we should be transmitting that mid next week, I would guess. We're reviewing cases as they are in progress in LEFTA, and there's possibly one case that's suitable for audit, but we haven't arrived at a definitive decision at this point. Other than that, it's going real well. Everything is working smoothly, and we're staying on top of the allegations as they're being processed through IA. Any questions?
So Rick, we can expect a quarterly report on the next agenda, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Right. Item 6.4, legal counsel mediation policy update. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. It's good to meet those of you who are new this month. So I'm one of the two who serves as your legal counsel. And what this particular agenda item is about is that the original ordinance that established the creation of this body also said that the body should create or should work with the chief to create some sort of a mediation policy to resolve certain smaller disputes that don't fall into the level of a serious incident. And so there was a subcommittee created that drafted a policy, and then it was shared with the chief and with the Police Officers Association. And I'd say we're sort of 95% in agreement as to how this mediation policy should work. But there was one request to change that came back that we felt would make the mediation policy something that the public would rarely, if ever, use, And so we've had some back and forth with the Police Officers Association to try and see if we can get past that last 5% and get something that all parties agree to. So to that end, in the last month, we, as your legal counsel, met with counsel for the Police Officers Association, seeing if just the lawyers could get together and work this out. And while, you know, I wouldn't say we had a huge breakthrough, I do think it was a productive conversation, and I think each side has a deeper understanding of sort of the concerns and the nuances of those concerns of the other side, and enough so that, you know, we've got a few new ideas of creative ways to bridge the gap. And so where we are in the process right now is we're scheduling something with the subcommittee to brainstorm with them these sort of new ideas. We hope that by your meeting again next month, we will have had that meeting with the subcommittee and also an additional meeting with counsel for the Police Officers Association, and we will then be in position to give you another update next month. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Dale. Just to follow up, the subcommittee is Daniel, it is Caitlin, and it is Chair Johnson. I will be scheduling that meeting with Dale or Caroline. We'll do that in the next couple weeks to reconvene, as Dale mentioned.
So Dale, you said you're feeling hopeful that there's a way to come to some agreement that will address the concerns we've expressed on this committee and also address the concerns that the Police Officer Association leaders have. And you believe, I don't know if you could give us much more than that, you believe that this is something we're going to feel comfortable with at this end?
I mean, at the end of the day, you know, you all will have the opportunity to vote on what you think is appropriate. It's my hope that what you all vote on and what you think is appropriate is something that the Police Officers Association also can agree with. That's not a necessary condition for you all voting on what you think is most appropriate and most consistent with the ordinance that created you all. But I'm not at the point now where I would give up on continuing to engage and to try to get towards something that all parties agree with.
Well, I think those of us here on the CPOB want to work with the Police Officers Association and want them to feel as comfortable with this as we do. So I think, you know, I appreciate the work you're doing in terms of trying to come to some agreement. But yeah, we want to also make sure that our community concerns are addressed.
Right.
So, yeah. Okay.
We will
well,
keep
I think
working.
Okay, I think you know where we stand, so thank you for that.
Thank you, Dale.
Welcome.
Okay, item 6.5, the CPOB ad hoc subcommittees report. We have those three subcommittees: policies, operations, and training, committee to policing and outreach, and hiring practices for Ocean's employee wellness programs. The committees like go first, like policies, operations, and trainings. What we want to do is, you know, our mini homework assignment was to take a look at the NACL website and try to look at some of those webinars that would be useful for each of the subcommittees to gather information from and gather some learning from and be able to use. And what we want to do is be able to have some meetings with those subcommittees in the future to actually get some things that we're looking at wanting to create or move or change, and be able to hold some meetings with each of those subcommittees. So
I don't know if we want to
I guess we don't have
address
Yeah.
John's placement, John Fonseca's placement on one of these subcommittees before we go, or do you want to just have report out and then you can get a sense of what?
We could, John, we do want you to be on a subcommittee. You probably can choose one, so that probably would be the best thing. So we'll probably wait and allow you to choose one. You can look at the three that are available and kind of go from I know that first one, we have Lauren and Bob that are on that one, and I don't think Bob can, anything.
Oh,
I
We can
could,
use
I
right
could,
now.
I could list out who's on what. if-
Yeah,
if it
I've
helps.
got the.
If it will help.
He's got-
subcommittee.
yeah.
Okay, okay.
Let me try a different tack. So as I was looking through all those NACOL webinars, and they've got a page of webinars, did everybody have a chance to take a look at those? Right, there's like, I don't know, count them, 50 of them, really great ones. And so, you know, what I did is I looked at the different subcommittees and some of those webinars that would probably fit for each of the subcommittees. And you know, for the police operations and trainings, I took a look at the civilian oversight of police surveillance technology was one. Strategies for successful mediation program being another. So I kind of went through each of them and looked at some of those webinars that might be useful. Did anybody else have a chance to do that? This reminds me of being like a college counselor. No, so.
Just as a follow-up to
Right.
to what Leroy's saying, those of you who have seen my emails that go
Yeah.
out whenever there's a NACOL training
Yeah.
available, I will send an email out to the board asking if any board members want to sign up for that webinar. The city does pay for it. If you do, you respond back. I sign you up, give you your access, email confirmation, and then you get an email from NACOL with the link in it, and you should be on the lookout for that. We did have a few sign up for the latest webinar. I apologize, I do not recall what the title and subject matter of that webinar was, but we will always send you out as much info from NACOL that we see in regards to the webinars to satisfy the item that Leroy's speaking to right now is that NACOL educational component.
You want me to,
Yeah.
I just wanted to mention, there's also, besides NACOL, there's the Bureau of Justice Assistance, which was brought to our attention by Dennis Montejano, our other IPA person. And I did check into that website and they have some great speakers there as well. And so I had gone to one webinar from the Bureau of Justice Assistance and then one from NACOL. So I don't know if anybody wants to go and share some of the information, so that way, especially John could have a sense of what the various subcommittees are about. I think it would really help all of us too, to learn, you know, what kind of information you're gathering.
Yeah, I did pull up the next NACOL webinar series. Subject matter will be how the police became untouchable, and that's on April 25th.
That's the one, yeah.
Yeah.
That's the one. And their webinars are all archived. If you go on their webpage, they make it very accessible to view past webinars. I don't even think they charge for the archive. It's the live interaction that they charge the $15 fee that the city covers. So you can attend them live or you can watch them archived. It's your choice.
Their listing of the archived ones is pretty extensive.
Yeah.
It's pretty.
A lot of them.
Just a few of them that I saw that kind of fit for the hiring practices, promotions, employee wellness. Were things like implicit bias training for law enforcement and some of the things I saw in there, the individual's inverse relationship for, you know, if I say, yeah, I'm not biased, I'm biased. If I say, I'm really not biased, I'm really biased. So the people who scream the loudest about not knowing anything about bias, that tells you where we are. Some of the other ones where I looked at death anxiety and police culture, which I thought was really interesting and talking about just relating to a writer who's written extensively on death culture and fear and how it motivates people to act in certain ways, right? And probably folks in the military who I've never been in combat. I've been in the military and been in almost a few accidents, but that's my own fault usually. But you know, it does direct you to act in a lot of risk-taking ways. So I thought that kind of jumped out. And there was one really good one about best practices when dealing with the media, which I think would be great for all of us to take a look at, just for knowledge and to be able to speak to people. We, of course, in public and representing the oversight board.
Of course, you are the only one that could speak to the press
Yeah.
for the oversight board. None of us.
Okay, so I'm the only one that's gonna watch that one, so.
We
But,
need to refer.
That's
the
right,
rest to
you guys can stand back
That's
with
right.
me.
That's great.
We'll be-
That's a relief.
We'll be a unit. But a lot of great training material. So just in the sense of training material, because as you were saying, Michaela, you know, I think the training is huge, right? You know, I look at, you know, things I've done as a college counselor for 27 years. I know that, but I don't know anything about policing. I know what I read in the paper and they only tell me what they want me to know. So that's what I know, right? So our knowledge level needs to increase and be as good as it can be.
Yeah, I think that's one of the benefits of having a board like this, though, is we actually get to have that conversation.
Yep.
Right? We get to hear our side, we get to hear from the public, we get to hear from the PD side. So, you know, thank you everyone for being here, because this is what it's about. This is how we get to move forward and create that change that we want to see.
And I'll throw out that ride-alongs are still available.
Oh, yeah, right.
I think, Christian, you sent that out to me and we sent it out to everyone, the officer who's currently charging it. So anyone who wants to schedule a ride along, I think I sent that email, I can resend it.
It's Todd Snyder,
That's not,
TSNYDER at City of La Mesa. If anybody wants to schedule, Sergeant Todd Snyder would do that.
I'll speak to that if I can. I've done 2 ride-alongs over
Okay.
like 20 years. The best thing I've ever done in terms of putting myself in, you know, the shoes of the officers that protect us, and I highly recommend it if you, especially I think if you sit on this board, it should almost be mandatory to go out there and see what they're doing so we can, you know, speak, you know, have a better understanding of what they actually go through.
Yeah.
And then that can kind of, you know, share some light on that as well too, but highly recommend it if someone hasn't done it.
I think we're twisting arms to get everybody, if they haven't and they're serving on this board, we need to get them to sign up for one.
You can ride with me if they want.
Yeah. I just wanted to offer, I kind of had a couple of things that dealt with the racial identity
Profiling Act.
Profiling Act. So with that data that's going to be coming forward, I think it's important to look at that as an opportunity for growth and accountability and transparency. And so the Bureau of Justice Assistance had a seminar, webinar about 3 Black law enforcement leaders in the South. And they retraced the 54-mile walk of the 1965 Civil Rights March. And during that time, they worked together, they spoke to the press, 54 miles, they, spoke to a lot of people along the way. But their focus was on evidence-based policing. And that's what they really wanted to move in that direction, that we emphasize the roles of the police as public servants, appreciation for those willing to risk their lives to do this type of work, and then accountability. So, mainly having a better understanding of how to work effectively in minority populations. So they, they had a variety of recommendations that they made. And then the NACOL webinar was Dr. Cynthia Lum. And she is a law enforcement leader nationwide. Her main focus is evidence-based policing. She does all kinds of presentations across the country on that, and she's highly respected. And she tracks crime trends and internal issues, but she says research should always have a seat at the table, no matter what you're doing. It should always have, the research should always be a component. So questions to ask, do police activities lead to desired outcomes? And we found out once we got the data in over the 90s and the early 2000s that zero tolerance and tough on crime legislation did not have the outcomes that we desired. They ended up punishing people too harshly, and it put people in a spiral, downward spiral, and that's what we talked about at the school to prison pipeline. So over reliance on arrest in prison instead of trying to figure out how to get people out of whatever difficult situation they're dealing with in their lives can be more effective. So officers are more effective when they are proactive instead of reactive, like getting to know the community, getting to understand the community. Patrol, investigate, and mitigate places where crimes concentrate, not on individuals. So place-based approaches. They look at how can they clean up the place, how can they address the problems within that particular area, not on individuals. It's an opportunity for them to really make the world, the community safer for everybody. So, you know, it just, a lot of really good ideas came out of these webinars. So I highly recommend, if you haven't had a chance, sign up. Yeah.
So we'll move on to our next item, number 7, committee reports.
Well, 6.6 real quick, I'm sorry.
Sure.
Councilmember Johnson.
Sure.
I added 6.6 to the agenda. It's really, it could have been part of 6.5 and we don't have to spend a lot of time on it. But some of you that were around in 2022 will remember that the subcommittees, when they did meet back in February and October of that year, they produced memos to the board that highlighted the different issues that they discussed, the conclusions they drew from that, some of the things that they were looking into. When I go to schedule the subcommittee meetings in the coming week or two, I'm going to include these memos with each subcommittee. I think this will be very beneficial to the subcommittees because it'll keep you from working on something that's already been looked at. It'll inform your process going forward with what you want to continue with. So these will be included with the scheduling of the meetings for everyone that's involved in a subcommittee. We have a lot of new faces on both the PD side and on the board side that were not here in 2022. So these memos that the subcommittees came up with will be very helpful to you. I just wanted to mention that will be a tool you can use. Thank you.
Okay, yeah. Now, item 7, committee reports. Item 8, staff and board member announcements.
I have one announcement. I would like to have a resolution too. I've had Apple support and Cox support spend about 20 minutes to half an hour each with me and have control of my computer to determine whether or not why I am not receiving any correspondence from the city. And I know that Stacy has sent things out because my name is on the list that was sent to me again by Janet, but I haven't getting any correspondence from the city to know what's going on.
Bob, can I ask you a question?
Excuse me?
Bob, can I ask you a question?
Yes.
We recently sent you a test email with 2 other email addresses that you provided. Did those email addresses receive that?
No, nothing.
Okay, we have a email black hole mystery.
I know.
Yeah, it's been going on a long time. We're not getting emails sent back to us as undeliverable. So that tells our IT department that the problem's not on our end, but we're gonna need to look at this further, Bob, to try to figure this out. And so I apologize for what's happening.
Yeah, it's 3 months now, and I just figure, well, maybe the city doesn't want me to know what's going on.
Yeah, Bob, I can promise you.
One way to keep them out.
We just need to figure this out. If we can't figure this out, I'm going to text you or call you myself.
Okay.
You were missing a few too for a while.
Yeah, for a while, but I did ultimately switch. I changed email providers and that seemed to amend the issue. So now I am getting them, but initially, yeah, I wasn't.
Our
is the
folks
best.
are baffled at Bob's email issue. We don't know what's happening, but we got to keep working at it, Bob. So
Thank you.
We're going to do that.
And I just want to announce that our Juneteenth and Friends celebration that I'm working on with Patricia Dillard and Alan Durden, that is going to be held on Sunday, June 18th, which is also Father's Day. But even if you just come for a little bit, it's a great day. I know the police department has really, last year really helped us out immeasurably with a lot of specific things. And it's a real safe, family-focused environment. There's no booze, so it's very safe. And it's just, you know, family fun, kid fun, music, the Martin Luther King Choir, and a lot of various performances. So it's really great afternoon, noon to 4 on the 18th. So please come stop by.
And last year it was the best Father's Day I've ever had.
Yes,
So,
right. Yeah, that's right.
If you think your Father's Day won't be good, you're wrong. It'll be good.
It's a beautiful
It'll be
place.
awesome. Okay.
Real quick before we go, I did just have a quick question. So I know a meeting or two back, we talked about, I think that there was a grant that the PD had gotten for, was it mental health training?
Yeah.
Is there any update on that? I do have a woman that I ran into at church who actually has an organization that does mental health training actually for police departments all across the state. So I was just curious as to if there was any updates on that.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you bringing that up. We decided to move forward with the Cortico
Okay.
app. I think I talked about the application where officers can have it on their phone and they can seek, there's lessons on there. They can reach out for assistance through that app. Katie, you can probably go into a little bit more details because she put it all together and she's our wellness coordinator.
Oh, great.
Yeah, the app is really handy. Yeah, all the kids these days, right, they all text each other and do all that. So the Cortico has really expanded to be more than just a wellness application. It is a training resource. There's like guided mindfulness things, podcast things you can listen to on the app once you have the membership. And one of the things that really drew us to Cortico, in addition to those add-ons and the ability to confidentially have a conversation with someone that's in a peer support network that's been vetted on there for them. They can have those conversations. They can do self-assessments on things for anxiety, depression, a host of issues that we tend to see. And the other really cool thing with Cortico is for the one price, it supports not just our officers, it supports our dispatchers, it supports our professional staff, and it supports their families. Everyone in their family, there's a unique login that we have. It's one login for everybody, so it gives them that they're anonymous on there. We don't track that. We don't know. We can track usage rates. We can see how many times the login has been logged in and what things people are using, but we can't see who it is. So this supports not just our officers, but all of our professional staff and our dispatchers and their families, because they take it home, you know, and what goes on at home can come to work, and what goes on at work can go home. And so we really want to support them as a whole individual. So that's why we went with Cortico for a portion of those grant funds. But I would love to find out who it is that does the wellness training, so we can talk.
Yeah, we'll definitely talk about that for sure. Thanks for sharing.
Absolutely.
Okay, if nothing else, we'll adjourn at 5:31.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, everybody online.
Thank you.